So, great question by Rick. He's asking, why do the two witnesses need to come at the first 3.5 years and not at the second 3.5 years? So let's unpack that. Well, we are first introduced to the two witnesses in Revelation chapter 11, verse 3, and it says, "And I will give power to my two witnesses, and they will prophesy 1,260 days clothed in sackcloth." Okay, so these two witnesses, we just established that they are going to be in their ministry for a total of 1,260 days, which is 3.5 years. So we know it's going to be 3.5 years, but which 3.5 years is it? Well, if you continue reading down in Revelation 11, verse 7, it says, "When they finish their testimony, the beast that descends out of the bottomless pit will make war against them, overcome them, and kill them." So what we read from or understand from Revelation chapter 11 is that you see the two witnesses. They are standing in front of the temple, as Revelation chapter 11, verse 1 and 2 tell you. So there they are. So imagine it. They are standing in front of the temple for 3.5 years, and they are untouchable. Nobody can defeat them. Anybody that tries to hurt them is going to be ended. And so that is going to take place for 3.5 years. So their testimony is for 3.5 years, and then after their testimony is complete, then the beast overcomes them and kills them. So why, I'm painting you this picture because this all is connected back to Matthew chapter 24. Because if you go back to Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, Jesus is talking about the tribulation here. And because remember, there's the tribulation, the first 3.5 years, and then there's the great tribulation, the second 3.5 years. So 3.5 and 3.5, 7 years. So we're dealing with the 7-year period here of tribulation, but you can refer to the first 3.5 years as tribulation, and you can refer to the second 3.5 years as great tribulation. And we get that term great tribulation here in Matthew 24. We'll get to that in a second. But in Matthew 24, verse 15, it says, this is Jesus talking. He says, "Hey guys, therefore when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place." Now that's the key right there, because in order for them to get into the holy place, the two witnesses need to be removed. So the abomination of desolation cannot be in the holy place until the two witnesses' ministry is completely up. So the two witnesses, they're going to be standing in front of the temple and essentially protecting it for a time. And so this temple is going to be guarded by these two witnesses, and then they're going to be there for 3.5 years, and then they will be killed. The beast is, you can imagine the beast walking over their bodies if you want to, just to kind of give you a visual. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you can use your imagination a little bit. But in Matthew 24, verse 15, Jesus says, "Therefore, when you see..." So this is something they're going to actually be able to see. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet standing in the holy place, then he says in verse 16, "Let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." So people are going to see this actually take place. So what's important to understand is that the beast will not be able to go into the temple until the two witnesses finish their ministry. And so in Matthew 24, verse 21, Jesus continues, and he's like, after the abomination of desolation is put into the temple, he says in Matthew 24, 21, he says, "Then there will be great tribulation." So there's a very clear distinction before the first 3.5 years of tribulation, and it's distinct. There's a distinction between the second 3.5 years of tribulation. Well, what changed from the first 3.5 years to the second 3.5 years? Well, during the first 3.5 years, you have the two witnesses that are alive. They're standing in front of the temple. They're doing all kinds of signs and miracles, and they're preaching and whatever. And then after they're killed, then the Antichrist is able to go into the temple. And then that's when Jesus is like, "Hey, when that happens, get out, run away." So that's what he tells them, and that's in Matthew 24. But this also comes into play a little bit too, and you tie this in to make 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 make a lot more sense as well. Because in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1, Paul says, "Now, brethren, concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our gathering together to him, we ask you not to be soon shaken in mind or troubled, either by spirit or by word, or by letter as if from us, as though the day of Christ had come. Let no one deceive you by any means. For that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin is revealed, the son of perdition, who opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God or that is worshipped, so that he sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Now, this is really, really instructive, because the two witnesses, if you're trying to like figure out end times, the two witnesses are key. So what we can understand from this is that the two witnesses are going to be guarding the temple for 3.5 years. Then they are going to be killed. After they are killed, then and only then can the Antichrist go into the temple. The Antichrist will not, like, he's not even going to try. I don't even think he's ever going to try. And so since he can't go into the temple until after the two witnesses have been killed, after their ministry for 3.5 years has completed, after he kills them, then he's going to go in. So that's what. So Revelation 11, Matthew 24, and 2 Thessalonians 2 all kind of tie in together. You have this whole picture of a temple standing, which there's going to be a third temple. They could build it. It's not going to take very long to build it. They already have all the pieces. It's just going to be like putting together a puzzle. So this third temple is going to be in existence. Now, whether the third temple is going to be built before the rapture or after the rapture, I don't know. But what I can tell you is that the third temple is going to be standing before the tribulation begins. And so why do I know that? It's because the two witnesses need to be standing in front of the temple for 3.5 years. And then after the two witnesses die, then the Antichrist goes in, and then he is revealed. It's very apparent to everybody who he is at the 3.5 year mark. Because Jesus doesn't tell the Jewish people to flee to the mountains before he reveals himself. He says flee to the mountains after he reveals himself. So the Jewish people are still kind of confused as to who the Antichrist is for the first 3.5 years of the tribulation. But then at the 3.5 point in Daniel 9:27, he's going to break that covenant in the middle of a week. And then after he breaks that covenant, all the Jewish eyes, they're going to pop open, and they're going to be like, oh gosh, that's the bad guy right there. And then they're going to flee to the mountains. So the two witnesses is key to understanding as far as understanding these types of things. But as per always, per usual, just so you guys recognize, like, I believe in a pre-tribulation rapture. I think we're going to be getting out of here before this all takes place. There's people who disagree with that, but that's completely fine. As usual, we need to always focus and keep the main thing, and the main thing is letting people know about Jesus and how cool he is and what he did on the cross for us, and that he died on the cross according to the scriptures. He was buried and he rose again on the third day according to the scriptures. So Rick, hopefully this helps in some kind of capacity. And if you have any other questions, reach out. Thanks.